everyone, welcome to my channel. So today is going to be my update for my palette rotation series. I am very excited. I know I usually update this the first Tuesday of every month, and technically this is the last Tuesday of the month, but I thought it was close enough. So that is what we will be doing in today's video. I hope you all enjoy, and let's get started. So if you don't know, my palette rotation series is where I randomly choose 5 palettes for my collection, and I have to use each of those palettes at least once throughout the month, and I need to use just that palette to create a look. So these are the 5 palettes that I had in for the month of May. I did use each of them one time, and I will be going through the looks that I created with each of them. But first, I want to talk about some of my overall palette usage and some pans that I hit, so we will jump into that first. So I am filming this a little bit early, so the month isn't actually over yet. But I usually say how many palettes out of my collection I used, so I will go ahead and insert that number on the screen. So it's going to be a number out of 70 palettes, and that is the number of palettes that I reached into this past month. And out of those palettes, my most used this month was my ABH Modern Renaissance palette. And I'm not going to open it yet because I do, spoiler alert, have a pan in there that I'm going to show you in a second. But this one was my most used palette this month. I used it a total of 4 times. I know that's not like a whole lot, but when you have 70 palettes to reach for, that's pretty good. So I am really happy. This is my favorite palette in my collection, so I was happy to get some use out of it this past month. And now we can talk about the pans that I hit, and one of them did come from my Modern Renaissance palette. So I now have 5 pans in this palette, and I don't know if you can see, but the pan that I hit this past month was in Cypress Umber. So I just hit a little baby pan in this shade. I knew I was close. It only took me the 4 uses, and it was pretty easy. This is a fairly powdery shade, and ABH shadows, especially in this palette, are notoriously easy to hit pan on. So I'm not very surprised that I hit pan on it. It's also a shade that I use quite a bit. So yeah, that was my first pan this month. My second pan actually comes from one of my focus palettes for this month, and it is the Huda Beauty Nude Light palette. So it is in this light shimmer over here, this 6th shade. So here is an up-close look at this shade. This was fairly easy to hit pan on. I feel like it took me around 15 uses. These pans are really shallow, so super easy, and I was mostly using this in my inner corner or all over the lid. So I was using quite a bit of this shade when I did reach into it, but yeah, very happy to have a pan in this palette and another pan to add to my collection. So those are the only 2 pans that I hit this past month, and I will go ahead and insert my pan percentage up on the screen. I am slowly working my way towards 50. That is kind of my base goal for this year. I want to hit at least 50 pans total in my collection. I'm getting really close. My other goal is to hit 2 pans each month, which honestly I think I have been doing so far, so hopefully I can continue with that and we will get over 50 pans by the end of the year. So super excited. So now I'm going to talk about the palettes that I brought into my collection, and then we will finally get into the update for my actual palette rotation project. Alright, so if I'm not mistaken, I brought 3 palettes into my collection this past month. My first one, I love this palette. This is the ColourPop Winnie the Pooh collab palette. This is the Sweet as Can Be. And here is what she looks like on the inside. So cute. I absolutely love this color story. I love this palette. I've used it a couple of times and I think it is really good. The next two palettes I brought in are both from the same collection. They are from the I Heart Revolution and Disney Princess collection. So we have the Tangled palette right here. Ooh. So lots of beautiful shades in here. There we go. And then I also brought in the Moana palette. So I do have first impressions on all three of these palettes if you want to go check those out. But yeah, those are the three palettes that I brought into my collection this month. Alright, now the actual update part of this video. We are going to go through the 5 palettes that I had in for the month of May, starting out with my Huda Beauty Nude Light palette. So here is what this one looks like on the inside. Super simple and easy to use for every day, and I will go ahead and insert a picture of the look that I created. So for this look, I used this first matte purple shade right here through the crease, blended it out with this matte cream shade. I believe I packed a little bit of this brown shade in the outer corner, blended it into the crease a little bit. I used this shimmer on my outer corner, this one on like the first half of the lid, and then put this one in my inner corner. And I'm pretty sure this is the look that I hit pan on that shade with. I did use this palette also a couple other times this month, but I had paired it with other palettes, so that doesn't count for this project, but obviously it got me my pan, so super happy about that. So yeah, I love this palette. This is definitely in my top 5 favorite palettes in my entire collection. It's so easy to use for everyday looks, and I always just feel so glamorous. The shimmers in here are so pretty, and I just do not have enough good things to say about this palette. The next palette I'm going to talk about is my Ulta Ravenclaw palette. And here is what this one looks like on the inside. So this is definitely one that I like to reach for more in the winter for the blues, but I was able to create a nice look with it this past month, so I will insert a picture of that. So for this look, I packed bark pretty much everywhere on the lid and through the crease. I deepened up the outer corner with Pigwidgeon. I think I blended out with natural. That's typically what I do with these light matte cream shades. And then on the inner corner, I packed Beauxbatons, and it was just a nice little pop of blue for the inner corner. I really enjoyed how this look came out, and I am super excited to continue to play with this palette. It's one of my favorites as well in my collection, and this light blue shade is one that I really, really enjoy using. So yeah, definitely a really nice palette and one that I'm excited to keep using. I am working towards hitting pan on this light blue shade up here, just kind of naturally in its own time, but it did make me happy to roll this into this project so I could get another use out of it this past month. Next up, another one of my favorite palettes. This is my ColourPop and Disney Princess It's a Princess Thing palette. So here is what this one looks like on the inside, and I will insert a picture of the look I created. I was so happy with how this look came out. So I pretty much just used this entire top row. I used these 4 matte shades in the crease, and then I packed Triton all over the lid, and then I did use some of Ray in the inner corner, and I was just in love with how this look came out. I thought it was such a nice look for every day, and definitely one that I am going to be reaching for again, because I just thought it came out so pretty, and I was just really in love with it. So like I said, this is one of my absolute favorite palettes, so of course I was so happy to reach for it this past month. I only reached for it once, but I just know that I will continue to reach for this so much in the future. So my next palette up is my I Heart Revolution Beauty and the Beast palette. Here is what this one looks like on the inside. So once again, I will insert the picture of the look that I created. So this look is not what I expected to create when I first reached into this palette, but it turned out to be my favorite look from this past month. So I am just super happy with how it turned out. So I used the shade West Wing through the crease and then toned it down a little bit with Library and then blended it out with Mrs. Potts. And then for the lid, I used Spell pretty much all over. I winged it out in the outer corner. And this shade is one that I don't use all that often, but when I do, I absolutely love the look of it. So it's definitely one I can see myself getting more and more use out of as I become more comfortable with it. And then for the kind of first third of the lid, I used Lumiere and then did Magic Mirror in the inner corner. And then just did the matte shades once again on the lower lash line. And I am just seriously obsessed with how this look came out. This palette is quickly becoming a favorite in my collection. I just always love the looks that I create with it. It started out kind of being a little bit confusing and maybe even a little bit boring in my mind, but I have just fallen in love with the colors in this palette. And yeah, obviously, like I said, this look that I created this past month was my favorite. So yes, this is a really nice palette and I'm excited to reach for it more in the future. Alright, then our last little palette up was my Wet n Wild Not a Basic Peach palette. So here is what this one looks like. So I will insert a picture of the look that I did. I feel like the picture I took really doesn't do this look as much justice, but the shades that I used were this one through the crease, and then I blended it out with this first transition shade up here. And then I packed this purple shimmer on the outer portion of the lid, and then this more corally pinkish shade on the inner half of the lid. And I also used some of this really dark brown to deepen up the crease, and I winged it out a little bit. And then I used this shade for my inner corner. And I really enjoyed how this look came out. It was a really nice, everyday, simple, easy to do look, and that is what I'm looking for when I do my makeup in the morning. So once again, another nice palette. This one is not one I reach for as much as I should, but I was super happy to roll it into this project this past month and to get at least one good use out of it. So very happy about that, and that concludes all of the palettes that I had in for the month of May. So those were my 5 palettes, my 5 looks that I created with them from this past month. So I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know which of those looks was your favorite, and we can get into drawing my new palettes for June. Alright, so we can get into choosing our palettes for June. So as always, I have my little document of all of my palettes listed out, and I do take out the palettes that have already been in this project this year. So I currently have 55 palettes that are eligible, and we will go ahead and choose 5 of them. So my Pretty Random app is set from 1 to 55, so we will go ahead and randomize. Get number 7, that is a low one. This is my Maybelline The Nudes palette. This is the oldest palette in my collection. I have only reached for it maybe once this year so far, so this will be a very good opportunity to use it. Next we have number 47, which is my Nabla Poison Garden palette. Very excited to reach for that one. Number 10 is my Wet n Wild Game Over palette. That's another one that I need to reach for more often, so I'm very excited that that one is getting rolled in. Number 2 is my BH Cosmetics Nuevo Neutrals palette. Love that palette. That'll be a really good one to use. And our last palette for this month is number 19, which is my Ulta Hufflepuff palette. So I'm going to go ahead and go grab all of those, and I will be back to share them with you all. Okay, so I feel like we have a really good mix of palettes in this round. So starting out, we rolled in my Maybelline The Nudes palette. So this one is obviously very neutral, a little more on the cool tone side. I do have 2 pans in this palette, and it's not one I reach for a whole lot anymore. Like I said, it is my oldest palette, so there are definitely newer ones in my collection that I reach for over this, but it's still a really nice staple cool tone palette in my collection, so that is why I keep it around, and this project will of course give me a chance to reach for it. Next up was my Nabla Poison Garden palette. Look at this packaging. It looks stunning. And then here are the shades inside. Always hard to show a gold packaging, but I do really enjoy the color story of this. I haven't used this palette a whole lot. It is fairly new in my collection, so this will give me a good opportunity to reach for this palette. I already know I want to play with like the pinky purple shades in here, so that's probably what I'll end up doing, but it always depends on the day for me. Next up, we have my Wet n Wild Pac-Man Game Over palette. And here, first off, this packaging, so cute. But here is what this one looks like on the inside. This one is a bit more on the colorful side, so it's not one I reach for on an everyday basis. And it's not one I typically reach for by itself on an everyday basis. It's one I like to pair with other palettes, but obviously the goal of this project is to use just this palette to create a whole look. So it's definitely going to push me a little bit creatively, but good palettes do that, so I am excited. And yeah, getting another use out of this palette will be a good thing. And then next we have my BH Cosmetics Nouveau Neutrals palette. And here is what this one looks like. Just a very staple neutral palette. I really do love this palette. I think it has a really good mix of more everyday shades. So this one will be super easy for me to reach for. I don't see any problem with getting at least one use out of this palette this next month. And then our final palette up is my Ulta and Harry Potter Hufflepuff palette. And here is what this one looks like. Matches my nails. So this is a palette that I love to reach for, specifically for the yellow shade in this palette. It is my absolute favorite yellow in my entire collection. So chances are that is what I will be doing with this palette. But I am going to try and push myself to use some of the other shades in this palette, because it is my goal to use every shade in my collection at least once throughout the year. So that's definitely something I'm going to work for in this next month with this palette, but I am very excited that it rolled in. So those are going to be my 5 new palettes for the month of June. I am super excited. We have a few that I haven't reached for in a little while, and a newer one in my collection, and I am very excited to get some good use out of these palettes, even if it is just one use. I am very excited. So please let me know what you think of this project, what you thought of this update, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future uploads. Give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy. And with all of that said, I will see you in my next video. Bye!